My name is Elkin Allen. I was asked to go to Milwaukee to cover the trial of Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer of 17 people. Milwaukee is a very pleasant city in the state of Wisconsin, USA, just north of Chicago on Lake Michigan. Settled by Germans in 1835, it was famous mostly for its beer. That is, until 1991, when it found to its horror that it was the home of one of the most ruthless serial killers of all time, Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, who lived in this block on the seedier side of town. On the night of July the 22nd, a terrified young man stopped a police car to say he had escaped from a crazy killer who was going to cut his heart out and eat it. They went to the apartment where he said he had been held prisoner, and they found a dead body and 11 skulls and other human remains.
We're investigating a homicide which occurred in the apartment building in the 900 block of North 25th Street. We do have one person in custody, and we do have a body in the residence. From our investigation, we feel that this individual strongly is involved in other homicides. We have taken evidence out of the building by the medical examiner to be examined. There were some hazardous material in the building which private contractors had to remove from the suspect's apartment.
It was really different from the way garbage smelled. It smelled worse than rotted meat.
Mr. Dahmer, you have a statutory right to have your preliminary examination within 10 days of today's date. Your lawyer informs me that you wish to waive or give up that 10-day limit and have the hearing scheduled on August 22nd. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Jeff Dahmer readily admitted to killing 17 young men, and he told the police where to look for their bones.
Everything will be all right. When Roland Thomas began crying over his slain son, other family members leaned on one another for support.
It's going to be all right. The storm's going to pass over. The storm clouds are not going to hang here always. They're going to pass over, not only for us, but for the entire city. Everything will be all right.
When I was asked to cover the trial, I frankly was very reluctant to make this filmed record you're going to see. Dahmer's confession, all 200 pages of it, was a catalogue of depravity about bizarre acts and parts of the body not usually mentioned. I objected. Wouldn't we just be being voyeuristic and exploitative? But when I got there, I realized that this was not a trial in the conventional sense at all. The result was preordained. Whatever the verdict, Dahmer would spend the rest of his life behind bars. No, for the people of Milwaukee, and perhaps for all of our civilization, this was an elaborate and necessary public expiation of his crimes in front of the relatives of his victims and the world's press and television cameras. By pleading guilty to the murders, Jeff Dahmer had left only one question open. Was he certifiably insane? A yes verdict from the jury could mean avoiding prison and living out his life in a secure hospital. A no verdict meant jail for life. To reassure America that Jeffrey Dahmer was only a sick human being and not a Halloween boogeyman, his gruesome life story was told and retold in court no fewer than 9 times by lawyers, by police, and by doctors. In this film, we have shared the narrative between a psychiatrist called by the prosecution, Dr. Park Dietz, a defense psychologist, Dr. Judith Becker, and the policeman in charge of the case, Detective Dennis Murphy, reading from Dahmer's confession.
He remembered his early family life as being one of extreme tension. States that tension came from the relationship that existed between his mother and his father. He stated that they were constantly at each other's throat and arguing. He stated his mother appeared to have some psychiatric problems and, in fact, had suffered a nervous breakdown at one time during his early childhood. He stated that she was on medication, had been seeing a doctor for much of the time. He states that he was advised by relatives that his mother had suffered a postpartum depression after he was born. And he took that to indicate that he was at least partially the problem for his parents' bad marital status. He stated he believed his mother became depressed after his birth and never quite fully recovered, and therefore he felt a certain amount of guilt in regards to the bad marriage of his parents. He stated as a teenager of 15 or 16, he realized that he was a homosexual. He never had any interest in women, and he had no idea why he was a homosexual. But he distinctly remembers in high school and during his teenage years that he was only attracted to men. See, it was at this time he began to fantasize of killing human beings. He also began picking up animals which were found on the road, which had been killed apparently by other vehicles. He would bring them home to his house, and he would use a knife in order to cut them open, and see what was inside of them and what they looked like. See, at the time his mother took his younger brother, who was approximately 6 years younger than him, and she moved out and left him alone in the house. He said at this time he started having strong feelings about being left all alone, and it was at this time he remembered having strong desires for not wanting to have people leave him. He stated that at this time he began hating to sleep alone at night. He further indicates that it was about this time in his life that he became familiar with alcohol, and he immediately became a heavy drinker and abused alcohol on a regular basis.
The timing of his first fantasies of bringing another person under his control in order to engage in sexual behaviors was sometime during the high school years. At various times, the specific age and grade that Mr. Dahmer has said this occurred has varied within a year or two, but it seems to be around age 15 or 16 that he first had sexual thoughts of striking another person and rendering him unconscious by a blow to the back of the neck, and then making sexual use of the unconscious body. The first time he tried or meant to act on that was when, at around that age, he found a particular male jogger attractive to him, and he, I believe, broke off a baseball bat, and then he concealed himself in some brush near where the jogger was expected to pass, with the idea that if the jogger came by, he would strike him on the back of the neck, make him unconscious, and enjoy the man's body sexually for a time. The jogger didn't come by, and so that didn't come to pass, and Mr. Dahmer never saw the man again. But that seems to be the first effort to put this fantasy into action.
In the summer of 1978, he then had a car and was living alone at the house. He had been drinking and was returning home when he saw a hitchhiker. The hitchhiker was not wearing a shirt, and he debated about whether or not to pick him up.